All right. Well, let's dive in. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Excited to have this conversation. I'll do a quick introduction. By the way, you'll notice I'm wearing a shirt underneath my sport coat today. It says "We're not a vendor." It's a new messaging that we're leaning into here at CX Effect that is really resonating well. Customers that start to understand that what the role that we do play as a technology advisory firm, and in helping to leverage different CX related technologies to drive business outcomes for our clients. And one of those technologies that we're big fans of is, in fact, Success KPI. And we're excited to introduce you to our community today and our customers and partners. You guys have a really compelling solution, and maybe a good place to start. Dave Rennison is the CEO. It's great to have you on. And I'd love to kick this off, if you don't mind. You have some really interesting background in the world of customer experience. This is not your first go around, and you've been a kind of a pioneer in this space for a long time. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I'm not sure how far you want me to go back, but
relevant.
One of my first managerial assignments was actually in a large contact center, which I ran for a couple of years. And I mean, we were using such antiquated technology that the vendors are no longer in existence. And we actually used to go in a back room and plug in to do agent observations. And some of my most comical early stories coming home from work were the things I heard on the phone talking to residential customers of the telecom company that I work with. But since then, we've come a long way in terms of the technology that's available. Probably the most recent experiences was, where I was CEO of Angel, which was a early CCaaS player in the analytics space, was one of our strengths. And we were acquired by Genesys in 2012-13 timeframe. So of course, since then, had a few other stops since the founding of Success KPI in 2018.
Fantastic. That's great. The world that we live in right now around CX is fascinating. In my 30 plus years in this industry, I started, by the way, when I was 13, Dave. So just to be clear, but in all those decades, I've never seen the pace of innovation be so fast around CX. Certainly, everything that we're hearing about with generative AI. How companies are leveraging AI in general to drive advancements in their technology. I think the big question that I always remind customers about, and our partners as well, is very simply, so what, right? All this new buzz and noise and technology, it's like, okay, get it. So what? What does that mean to me? I'm curious if we start there really quick. When you look at the level of innovation that's happening right now, and the pace of that, what do you believe is kind of the so what for typical CX leaders in enterprises today that are tackling these issues around customer experience and improving customer experience? What's the so what for AI with them?
I think the so what for AI is that if you're doing it right, these tools are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, right? And also, you don't need to build them from scratch. You can take some of these components and find them in productized offers that allow you to go to work with business users applying these technologies at scale. That's probably the biggest so what.
Yeah.
Whereas, AI and ML a decade ago were, unapproachable by folks working in a contact center. And really until we began to see them put into componentized solutions that we can integrate with other products, we're kind of out of reach. So these things are now within our reach.
Yeah. That's a big one. And to use your word, very approachable for even, heck, you have a 50, 100, 200 employee contact center today. A few short years ago, this stuff wasn't even on your radar, and now it's transforming even contact centers down market. A lot of what's driving this and the advancement around kind of APIs and all these disparate systems and being able to get real-time hooks into those systems to extract data, that's such a powerful thing today, and really at the core of what Success KPI does. If data is the new oil, talk about why that matters to CX leaders and how you guys are leveraging that.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of the things that we do with AI and machine learning, whether it's machine scoring of calls to avoid agents having to be, manually scored, like I was talking about in the back room, or using AI for topic detection, sentiment analytics, or using it to do call summarization or some of the other, automation tools that we bring to the platform. All of these things are just kind of little tidbits. The real key is in pulling all the data together.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons we founded Success KPI because we saw this vast amount of data that was being created and available as people moved to the cloud. So the at one point, move to the cloud is an architectural decision for many, right? And it's been kind of bandied around as both the question and the answer to everyone's hopes and dreams. But we found a lot of folks, once they got there on the other side of that, things weren't any better. They weren't necessarily worse. Maybe some things got better, some things got worse, some things stayed the same. And a lot of folks who have moved to the cloud are now wanting. But the real opportunity is the data that's available, right? The APIs that you get from an Amazon Connect or a Genesys Cloud or a Zoom Cloud Contact Center, the data that's there and the unstructured data that's available for further analysis open up a huge opportunity to really understand what's happening inside these conversations.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing because data by itself is left to its own devices is not super helpful, right? But how do I make data actionable? Maybe give us an example of that. I mean, with Success KPI, you guys make data actionable every day for operators in a contact center, right? What's a good example of that? You mentioned quality as one, right? Give us a couple real life examples of that.
Yeah, in fact, let me just start by also saying that I think one of the things that I talk about to our clients and to our services and sales and delivery teams a lot about is the fact that Success KPI is not magic, right? It's magical, but you still need to do some work to get the magic tricks to come to life, right? And so one of those might be, okay, so we can automatically score calls, but you still need to score some calls to train the engine, what it needs to know about these calls so that it knows what a good one looks like, right?
Yeah.
Once you've done that work, though, a properly run, contact center using automated scoring is also scoring in parallel, both to keep calibrating the machine, also to keep the supervisors fresh. You don't want your supervisors to stop listening to calls. What you want them to do is to only have to listen to 4 or 5 rather than 50, so that they can do other functions around the contact center. And you also want that coverage that you can get from using the machine to score 100% of the calls.
Yeah.
But even when you're done with that, what have we learned, right? Okay, so you scored 1,000 calls with supervisors, let's say last month, and each of your supervisors did 10. Let's assume 1,000 agent contact centers, 1,000 supervisors, right? Next question would be, well, so what? Well, what did the supervisor and agree with the machine, by the way? Did the calibration work?
Yeah.
And then secondly, what are you doing with this information?
Yeah.
Right, then we're back to that same job of we've got to sit and counsel our agents and talk to them about the things they did great, the things they need to improve on. That work doesn't go away.
Right.
But if we do it in a more engaging manner with a platform where the agents can get a scorecard, reflect on their performance, maybe they can even click in and listen to calls about where things broke down. And the supervisor can then show and tell without having to go hunting and fetching through a bunch of pieces of paper or different reports. Like, here's the report, here's your scorecard. Well, I don't know about that one. Can you show me? Yeah, let's click through. I gave you a no here and a no there. Oh, well, when did that happen? Well, let me go back to my notes in that conversation. I can click through to it. And now you're having a collaborative conversation.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not just about reinventing things with machine scoring, but doing the things we used to do just a little faster, a little better, and maybe in a more intimate manner by having this information so quickly and readily available to us.
Yeah, yeah. I love the transparency around that this is not something that you just flip a switch on and it does all the work for you, right? There's absolutely work that has to happen. You guys have done a lot of work around simplifying that as much as possible. This idea of a playbook builder, right? Of how you can use this playbook builder to build different flows very quickly and be able to get to value very quickly for customers. Describe that for us real quick.
Yeah, so this gets to a lot of the same concept that we talked about a moment ago. I'm a big believer that the scientific method, which has been around for a few hundred years, still applies, right?
Yeah.
And the approach of working from hypothesis through to discovery, through to fact finding, and then proving things are true, as well as then being able to report out and do the experiments over to show repeatability, apply to anything we'd want to study in the contact center.
Yeah.
And so let's assume that you had a contact center that was trying to uncover fraud, or trying to tackle the situation of customer churn. And maybe we had a mutual fund company, let's say,
Yeah.
and they receive phone calls, and they've got a priority customer queue for maybe some of their top investors. What if they could run a playbook that said, if the top investor Dinas is involved and the call's longer than 3 minutes, and the customer mentions move account, and maybe even mentions a competitor, like another mutual fund company or another broker, what would you want to do with that conversation?
Yeah.
If you were working to fix churn, the first thing you'd want to do is make sure that this really is a churn conversation. So you want to tune the playbook to trap these things, right?
Oh, yeah.
Then you probably want to study it. Then you want to figure out how many of them have occurred. And then maybe you want to figure out, okay, these are happening 100 times a day. Let's listen to them. Let's figure out how to improve them. And then let's use a playbook to launch a real-time agent assist save play. Or maybe use them to text a supervisor so they can barge in on the conversation and make a save. But ultimately, again, I hopefully illustrate an example that this is what playbooks can do. It can invoke real-time actions. It can invoke actions to create study rooms. It can invoke actions to inform others. It can invoke actions to assist agents.
Yeah.
But what you want to do is start with the problem. Think about how you would capture that problem in the real world, right? And then once you figure out how to capture it, figure out whether you want to intervene, study, learn, fix, or escalate.
Yeah.
And those are the things that can be used for, in real time and in near real time on live agent conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. If Joe in my contact center is routinely not good at being empathetic with upset customers, right? In past years, I would figure that out as a supervisor by randomly listening to a call, maybe, and I get maybe 2 or 3 of those a month for Joe, and I hear a call and I see that he wasn't being empathetic, and I schedule a coaching session with him, and it's a week, 2 weeks after that call example when he's finally getting coached on how to be more empathetic. And in your world, that coaching can happen immediately, even workflows where, hey, let's get Joe plugged into a self-paced training course that he needs to complete today, right? To highlight that kind of, so this idea of action that comes out of data, again, data that's not actionable is just noise, right?
Yeah, I often say, don't just observe, right? Don't just like have a pretty picture, right? Don't just be a pretty picture, right? Yeah. Be something that people can do something with. Yeah. You gave a great example on the sentiment one where, what if I could produce a report that showed the average sentiment, the average empathy topic trigger count, and ranked from 1 to 1,000 each of my agents based on their density, and say, all right, these are the bottom quartile. These are the top quartile.
Yeah.
First of all, we can study the top quartile and figure out what they're doing right, learn from that, and apply training for the rest of the team. We can also study the bottom quartile and find out how much of that is training, how much of that is human capability that we need to improve, et cetera. I'll give you a funny one, though. I had a contact center manager. The first thing, it's classic, like hello world type thing, et cetera. But the first thing you want to know is how many times his agents are using bad language. And so he set up a playbook to send him a text message to his phone, and he turned it on, and his phone started buzzing like once every hour. Uh-oh. And he's like, and first of all, he set it up for both agent and customer. And then he thought he had a crisis on his hands, but he drilled in and listened to all the calls. And he's like, he was amazed at how much, first of all, his customers were potty mouths. And second of all, how much what he thought was a swear word can be used almost innocuously. I'm not encouraging this or saying that's the best behavior. But again, this gets to that point of, you always have to go after a problem with one set of ideas in your head, but the real world will teach you more if you take the time to drill into the data.
Yeah, indeed. You told me a story a few weeks back when we chatted about a customer that I think one was on Genesis, and they were and Avaya, and they wanted a certain set of reports that they were used to managing the business with this system. They wanted to apply to a different system. I hung up with a customer just a bit ago this morning, hospital group. They have 3 different contact center platforms deployed throughout the organization, and the reporting nightmares that creates, the breaks that they have in visibility and collective visibility to what's happening across the enterprise. You guys have a really interesting way that you've been able to kind of bridge those gaps. Not every company has just one clean contact center, that has no hair on it, if you will, right? I mean, there's a lot of complexities. You're able to bridge the gap across contact center platforms. It makes the argument that data analytics is perhaps best outside of the contact center platform that could be agnostic to any of those systems.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd have to put this on a spectrum of scale of size of contact center.
Yeah.
It's not that if you have less than 100 seats, this doesn't apply. But typically what we see is when you get to the 200, 300, 400, 500 seats and above, even just having 2 channels, we've got customers who have, Salesforce being used for email or chat, and then they've got their voice platform on Genesis, Amazon, Five9, or other platforms.
Yep.
And they need to bring these worlds together just to get the channels integrated.
Oh, yeah.
Then you've got folks that are in migration, like you mentioned the one earlier from Avaya to Genesis Cloud, or they've got 3 different platforms and they need to unify their view. All of these are use cases that are, BI and reporting layer product handles. And the way it does this is we allow you to join those data sets and to blend those contact center inputs into one place. But I think the real magic trick comes when your management typically gets used to a certain set of reports.
Yep. Yep.
I've got like 12 reports that I'm used to using on my on-prem platform X. I'm moving to the cloud, and I need the metrics to be calculated the same way, the attributes to be represented similarly. I want to group things the way I used to group them. And yet some of the abstractions have changed. The concept of routing, it turns into queues. The concept of queues changes from platform to platform. But if you can unify how that data appears, and even better, leave it in the same structure at go live, you remove that kind of, I don't know what would be called like a cognitive, delay or dissonance that occurs when you see data, even when the columns are moved around. It slows you down in doing your job. And so one of the things we do is provide this almost chameleon-like reporting during migrations or across platforms for customers that want things the way they want them. If only because it's how they've done it before, to reduce stress on go live. Then they can always improve the reports and make them better later, but having that constant makes a big difference.
Sure. Tell us a little bit about workforce management really quick. It's a big topic for a lot of our customers that are tackling, lots of different trends there, right? Remote workers, flexible workers, people, trying to fill shifts is always a challenge. You, as you put it, play nice with a lot of different WFM platforms. How do you somewhat supercharge those platforms? How does your data help better inform staffing decisions, scheduling decisions?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when you break down the workforce management problem, again, I laugh thinking like we were solving some of these problems 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Manually, right?
Oh, yeah.
But in some cases, the problems really haven't changed. There's creating a forecast, right? There's creating a schedule.
Yep.
And then there's managing the real-time performance of the contact center that day. And then there's providing feedback to coach agents on how to comply with the schedule better in the future, right? So you got all those problems to solve. One of the first things I'd say is that regardless of where the forecast or schedule gets created, we're pretty nifty at taking that schedule and blending it in with the real-time performance in the contact center. And we've got some really refreshing visualizations and action-based tools to manage that. One of these is a new visualization we brought out called the Hive. And what the Hive is designed to do is to give you that feel for the buzz of activity and who's online, who's offline, who's supposed to be online, who's offline, and where are they. That research takes a lot of time.
Yep.
But if we can provide visual cues with color and iconography very quickly, this allows one person to maybe oversee a couple hundred people without a lot of extra work.
Yeah.
The second part is because we are agnostic on the WFM inputs, we can often do as good or better job than the underlying platforms in providing that visualization in connection with the actual agent activity.
Wow.
And then finally, we do have our own forecasting and scheduling engines that we provide on our own that can either be used to vet and check other platforms or potentially as tools unto themselves, which are, of course, natively integrated inside Success KPI.
Yeah, love that. That's fantastic. What do you tell customers that are leveraging outsourced partners for their contact center, BPO partners? There's an advantage to that approach in the sense that maybe I can do it for less money. They take over some of the headaches around recruitment and in training and onboarding and so forth. But I also hear frequently that there's frustration around lack of visibility, right? I don't have the same kind of reporting and visibility that I really need to run my business.
Mm-hmm.
How do you help solve for that problem for customers that are leveraging BPOs?
First of all, we serve a lot of BPOs. They're actually one of our top customer segment. And the first thing I might do is ask them is, do you have access to Success KPI? Because they may be able to provide a real-time stream of information back to you. And or if you were to both have two Success KPI instances, they could be brought together to kind of make the world be more seamless.
Love it.
But ultimately, I've never met a BPO that's not trying hard to delight their customers.
Yeah.
It's a tough business.
Oh, yeah.
And for anyone who's managed a contact center either in their company or managed a BPO, they know that, the grass is always greener and it's tough on both sides of this fence, right? So I think the biggest advice I would have to an enterprise company that maybe was outsourcing folks would be to engage in a collaborative discussion about how either they can put our system or a system like it on one side of the fence to share data so that it becomes more transparent. And the second thing I would probably say is to invite them into a conversation about what metrics matter.
Yeah.
Because even just providing those updates on a periodic basis every hour, every 15 minutes can sometimes reduce that stress.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Very cool. Dave, you are a kind of a student and observer of this industry and where CX is going next. There's lots of posturing out there, if you will. And I read an article recently around financial services. Wells Fargo is saying that 200,000 jobs in banking will disappear over the next 5 years. I talked with an AI futurist a couple weeks back who made a very provocative statement. 95% of contact center seats will disappear in the next 3 to 5 years. Though, some of that is certainly hyperbole, right? We know, but this is definitely, I think it's fair to say this is a very different world that we live in today than just a year or two ago. I'm curious on your take. Where does us all go next?
This is a great question. Well, first of all, I don't want to appear to be a Luddite here. I've been pushing, the cloud and SaaS for nearly 20 years. Yeah. And I was working on some of the probably most innovative IVR and IVA applications, 10 or 15 years ago. But I will always say that we are constantly chasing this asymptote of automation.
Yeah.
And that, I think people once thought that IVRs were going to make agents go away. And then people thought that chatbots were going to make the IVR go away. And then I think we've been talking about the demise of the contact center since the contact center was created.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think what's ahead is a lot more of the same with new technology. Mm-hmm. We're all going to have to continue to do the hard work of creating better customer experiences, listening to our customers, adapting to the changes of technology along the way, and applying that human expertise. Yep. To AI, human expertise to automation, the human expertise to analytics. And we have to work cohesively with the machine to make things better. Yeah. But I think it's going to be a long time before we see a 95% reduction in agents.
I agree. It's that's an awfully big number. Fascinating times. In closing, kind of, I'll give you the last word on this. You're talking to a CX leader. They've got 500,000 seats, whatever, in their contact center. They've got tons of competing priorities around. I want you to automate things, but I still want you to delight customers. I want you to provide more self-service options, but don't introduce friction. Grow revenues, but cut costs out of the business. Lots of conflicting priorities. What advice would you give to a CX leader right now on big picture wise? How should they tackle this area of data and actionable data? What would be kind of an appropriate next step in your mind for somebody that wants to lean in on this?
So let's assume that they've said, "Hey, we're gonna give Success KPI a shot. We want to plug you in," and they look at our entire product portfolio and say, "Should we use all of this?" My answer would be, in time, yes. But I would start with the reporting layer, get a full baseline, and get all of that working so we have a common understanding of what is. And if you're on one of the more modern CCaaS platforms that are already connected to our ecosystem, you can achieve this in days or weeks if you've got the right people attached to the project.
Yep.
The second thing I would do is then I would say, turn on our power package, which is where you get the speech analytics, the quality monitoring, and the playbooks, and pick one business problem and just blow it away. Study it in depth, and don't assume you have the answers, but assume that you need to apply some human talent to the technology to iterate, and that when you're done, you will not only understand the problem more fully, you'll probably have moved the ball on it, and you will also have learned how to go tackle problems in a more scientific manner. And then I just keep doing that over and over again, and use the tool set for its purpose, which is to help, large enterprise contact centers improve performance in lots of areas.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of a quick win, right? And don't try to boil the ocean or tackle all of these issues all at the same time. Where's one you can drill down on and really crush it? You'll learn so much from that experience that you can then apply at scale, right? Yeah. Really, really good wisdom. Hey, Dave, I've really enjoyed our conversation, my friend. This has been great. We're big fans
Thank you.
Of what you guys are doing. Congrats on what you've built. Looking forward to our customers learning more about Success KPI, man. And should have a great finish to the year together.
Thank you so much for having us here, and look forward to talking to you further.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Hope you guys all enjoyed that. Please make sure that you dig in at CX Basecamp, learn more about Success KPI. If you want to reach out to one of us here at CX Effect, we can help get you on the phone with the right people to really start understanding how Success KPI can drive massive improvements for your business. So thank you very much. Have a great afternoon, a great long weekend coming up. We'll see you.
Thank you.